right? It's so much money. And I hear people that'll find me on the streets, right? Because people know I'm into this investing thing. They'll be like, yeah, I had a friend that made 40 grand last week because they were doing that. And I just like, I'm like, stop, collaborate and listen. Dougal's back with a brand new.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Dougals, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
I got a question for you to kick this thing off, my friend.
Go.
Okay, go back through your lyrical brain, your lyrical memories, and tell me, what is the Kanye West lyric that first comes to mind, like sticks with you the most?
It's been too long. It's in Through the Wire when he is. I'm not gonna get it though, because I'm bad at those quotes. It'd definitely be from Through the Wire. Its first hit. Yeah.
So mine also from the early days comes up in my mind all the time. I'm just kidding, unless you're gonna do it. I don't even know if you remember that.
No.
But I think about that all the time. People will say something and they mean it, but they want to make sure that that you're going to mean it, or else they're like, oh, I was just joking about that, right? I love that. Just kidding unless you're going to do it. I bring that up here because you know who else is playing the I'm just kidding unless you're going to do it game?
Musk?
Close. Twitter, actually. In that same situation.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, what was their board thinking?
It's just like, it makes the fact that they had that quick turnaround, which I think fiduciary responsibility makes sense, right? The quick turnaround that they had just shows that someone needed to buy them and get them off the market because, come on, WTF. Anyway, Kanye, Musk, Twitter.
Well, they're all crazy and in a good way. I like Kanye and Musk. But that was the most bizarre. There's been some articles written about what's gone on behind the scene that I made my way through. The New York Times had one about who has Musk ear, and people seem to be implying that Jack Dorsey, the former founder and former CEO of Twitter, really encouraged Musk to take it private. And then there's been some other buzz about how dysfunctional the board is, which is interesting. Their actions don't make sense to me in terms of the about face they did in less than 7 days.
Because they were just kidding, unless you're going to do it.
It was more than that. It was there's no way we would ever accept this offer, except we're accepting this offer.
Yeah, exactly. 0% chance. We're going to poison pill you. We're going to put a horse head in your bed. And yeah, we'll take it.
I had to pull up the Kanye West lyric. There's so many great ones. The one I'd probably go to is, trying to be a millionaire, I use 2 lifelines. So good.
Oh, that's
and Through the Wire.
Yeah,
and then just imagine how my girl feel on a plane, scared as hell that a guy looked like Emmett Till. She's in Delta, so she's been throwing the dynasty sign. There's
yeah. I mean, it's it's pretty good. We're gonna kick this thing off with listener mail, but before we get to it, if you like what we have to offer, please go rate the podcast on whatever system you use to listen to it. Leave a review, helps people to find us. And then hit up skippydougals.com. That's the way you can figure out how to get in touch with us for listener mail, follow our Substack, all that kind of stuff. Check it out. 1 year ago today, actually, probably not, but sometime last year. I can't remember when it was, actually.
Oh, it's so dramatic.
Yeah. Sometime last year, you put a call out to the world. You said, please, someone, create a jingle that could potentially follow the Itchy and Scratchy from the Simpsons jingle for the Skippy and Dougal show.
Yep.
And the world has answered your prayers.
Oh, man. Special shout out here. Dan Byrne, who is a brilliant musician and does a lot of music all over the place, but especially for the Tony Kornheiser Show podcast. He came to the rescue here and he hooked us up with something that makes me smile. Hilarious. It's reached mixed reviews in my household, Dougals. I'll be honest about that. But I'll tell you, I smile every time I hear it. It might be a little, I don't know, out there, hilarious, kid-like, childlike.
Let's let the people decide and give us your feedback once you hear this, and we'll see if this becomes our official listener mail theme song. Here we go.
Thank you, Dan Byrne.
They fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. Fight, 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 fight. The Skippy and Dougal Show.
There it is. There it is.
Oh man, I don't have words, Dougals. It still makes me laugh.
All right.
When I hear that, I think we need to. I mean, this show is based around informal banter and hopefully banter that's entertaining, right? Between people who are friends and respect each other and have known each other a long time. But I think we need to fight more. It makes me feel like I'm not yelling at you enough.
We'll see.
I don't want to let the jingle down. So,
but there are some times, and just it happened recently, where we start talking about the things that we might discuss today, and it gets so heated that we just hit record. Like we're just like, all right, we're in it. We're in it. So we'll see. We got 2 pieces of listener mail. First one is from Josh. Thank you for sending this in. And it is about the thing that we talk about all the time, which is options being a terrible idea for the vast majority of investors. So this piece, it was in Bloomberg. It's called Mom and Pop Investors Took a $1 billion Bath Trading Options During the Pandemic. There's some articles that are just like clickbaity, like you don't really know what it's about, right? This one's very clear. It's like 25 words long, and it's letting you know that people losing a lot of money. Couple points to hit on here. New research from economists at the London Business School figured out that everyday day traders that were trading options, so options in the stock market, lost more than $1 billion during this period of time. The time they looked at was November 2019 to June 2021. And on top of that, they're saying it's actually $5 billion, over $5 billion when you look at the cost of doing business with market makers, what they're calling it. It's basically like trading costs. That's ridiculous.
The fact that trading costs are like 4 times what the actual trading losses are is crazy to me. I've heard that options are an incredibly lucrative business, but I didn't realize they were that lucrative.
I think that's why they make up like such a large portion for Robinhood, right? That crypto make up such a large portion because and people that are getting into options. Options are complicated. Let's just say that like they're a really complicated derivative instrument in buying equities, which is
the official stance of the show is you should not trade options. I think it's fair to say, right, Douglas?
The official stance is that the everyday and 99.9% of people should not trade options. I only go to that like level of asterisks because there will come a point, most likely, where Dougal's uses options, but not in the way that people are here, right? Like when I say that not the way people are using here, I'm saying like not buying options on Robinhood equity to bet what it's going to do in the next week. Yeah. Right. It's so complex. And part of where this trading costs, they're usually, I think they're called like indirect trading costs generally in this case, because it comes from the bid and ask spread of the options. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but you basically have the ask price, which is if you're going to buy a stock, that's the price at which someone was willing to sell it. The bid price is if you're going to sell a stock, the stock at which someone else is willing to buy it. And for options, sometimes that difference can be so high that what they're saying is that if you go and you buy the option and then you sell it immediately, then effectively you'd be losing a whole bunch of money. And so the price change that has to happen in order for you to make up that difference is so big. And so I think that that's the majority when they're talking about trading costs. I think that's what they're talking about. Yeah, is the bid-ask spread. Anyway, just like don't do it. I think it's like in period $1 billion, right? It's so much money. And I hear people that'll find me on the streets, right? Because people know I'm into this investing thing. They'll be like, "Yeah, I had a friend that made 40 grand last week because they were doing that." And I'm like, stop, collaborate and listen. Dougal's back with a brand new. Anyway.
So I was out with the family Friday night. We got stopped by one of my favorite local waiters, and one of my kids was playing Roblox because I'm a great parent, as you know, Douglas, right? So just like perfect parenting happening over here. He goes, "I just bought the stock." He did not realize that he was talking to Skippy, right? So then we broke down some fundamentals. I was like, "Oh yeah, that's down 80.67. I'm making stuff up, right? But I talked through the business case. It's been interesting. I was like, hey, my son's really into it. I might buy it for his college savings account. I don't think it's a really good investment, blah, blah, blah. This guy doesn't know what hit him, but you could see he gets a little excited because he's like, oh, yeah, well, I'm buying leaps, call options 2 years out. And then, then I decided to run away from the conversation because I actually wanted to have dinner and not talk about options with my waiter. But this stuff's crazy hot right now.
It is. And people are learning about a lot of this stuff for the first time, right? And retail trading is bumped up over the past year. And I think it feels exciting. Like I get why people would get into it because like it feels exciting. And the options are so volatile that it is like pulling that handle in the slot machine or going all in right on that bet or trying to count cards in blackjack or whatever. It feels like the gambling parlor. And it is. And it's fun. Like I get that.
Yeah,
I think lost $1 billion.
There's a lot of lotto ticket aspect tied that it's like a lotto ticket that's tied to some fundamentals. And so that feels really fun. But your average person is going to lose money and they're going to lose a lot of money. So those are just the odds that you have going.
If you haven't gone into looked into options too much or researched or anything, here's one. If you take nothing else away from this combo about options, I'm going to say this, and you can tell me whether you think this is the one thing or not, Skippy. It's this. If you buy an option, whatever strike price you buy that option at, let's say it's a call option, so you're betting it's going to go up. If it is below that price, you get 0. If it's above, you might make a little smidge. But like that is the most important thing I want people to take away. This is a 0, like all or nothing, basically. But it's usually like a little bit or nothing, not even all or nothing.
My takeaway is don't do it. It's dumb. There we go.
All right.
We can disagree. The theme song is right. I will fight Dougals to the death.
No.
All right.
We talked, what was it, before we go to the second piece? I think it was just like a few months ago, we were talking about that guy that was trading the doctor that made a whole bunch of money in the stock market. Like he built his portfolio to over $1 million. And then there was this SPAC that seemed like a sure thing, bought call options in the SPAC. It was something off by like a couple percentage points off the strike price. And so his portfolio went to 0. What Skippy said, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. Second thing, KG sent this in. Thank you, KG.
Oh,
NASDAQ.
Kevin Garnett. I didn't know you were a listener. What's up, bud?
Thank you. Well, he's retired, got nothing else to do.
Seriously, yeah.
NASDAQ just hit its 14-month low. Now, the reason I bring this up, we get listener mail that sometimes we don't talk about. The reason I bring this up again is because it hit them part of the same point that we talked about kind of recently around the fact that a 14-month low to me is like not.
Yeah, it's not really anything.
No, it's like, but this was the way it came out. This was just one article that they sent over, but something similar was in multiple publications around this. And I'm like, if you say, take this out of investing, if you come to anyone and be like, you have no idea what just happened, something that hasn't happened since last year.
Yo, I had pizza on a Tuesday. That hasn't happened in 14 months, baby.
Yeah, exactly. How is this news? But it's like, it was big news this week. Like it was big news. And if you actually look at the NASDAQ composite chart, like it's uninteresting. Like you look at that number, it's uninteresting. Now I know it's down like 20% this year. So that feels like the pain, day-to-day pain feels real.
No, I would say that differently. I think it's really interesting depending on your time horizon. But what people often don't do is they go, look at what happened in April. That's the article that everyone wrote at the end of the month because NASDAQ and the S&P had a really rough month. And then they go, look at year to date. That looks rough too. And they go, the world is ending. And I go, hit the 5-year button or the 10-year button on your little stock chart there and look how much that thing is up. That does two things. One, tells you to not worry about the day-to-day or the month-to-month, in my opinion, but also tells you that, hey, there might be a lot more pain coming. So if you think this is the worst thing in the world right now because the NASDAQ is down, I thought it was like 17% year-to-date or whatever it is, Dougals. Yeah, that might continue. It also might turn around. In my opinion, it's basically a coin flip from here for the short-term performance.
Agreed. Can I reach into the fishbowl for a sec? Do you want to stick on that for a moment, or can I?
No, let's go. We can keep it moving.
I want to reach into the fishbowl because what you just said is vital to the core thing that I want to talk about this week. Looking at time horizons and the importance of time horizons, and mix that in with the importance of how you grew up, the time period in which you grew up as an investor. Something that you brought up like a number of times, and there were a couple pieces I saw this week that just really brought that home for me. So the first thing I'll bring up is this tweet from Bill Gurley, the venture capitalist Bill Gurley, who's come up a number of times on the show.
Yep.
Because he says smart things. Here's the tweet. An entire generation of entrepreneurs and tech investors built their entire perspectives on valuation during the second half of a 13-year amazing bull market run. The unlearning process could be painful, surprising, and unsettling to many. I anticipate denial.
Preach. You said it exactly right. Bill Gurley keeps saying really smart things, which is why he gets on the podcast.
Yep.
I love this guy. He's so good.
I'm going to summarize this in other words. A lot of people got really excited over the last 5 to 6 years, thinking they were Bull Durham. Don't know why Bull Durham, because he said bull market. Thinking they're like the hot stuff, right? And they're thinking that the way that organizations, companies are valued in the private market and in the public market are valued in the way that they've been valued for the past 5 years. That's their entire paradigm, right? That's the paradigm they grew up in. So when they start to see valuations that are closer to historic norms, or maybe even lower for a period of time, you want to talk about what happened last year? That's not even. It's painful. I get that, because this is your world, this is your identity, right? And the market identity, it's really, really hard.
Well, you know what I loved about this is bringing that intellectual idea like home with an actual example that just happened. So Musk just bought Twitter. Musk is the world's richest person with paper money. I say paper money because it's all tied up in things. It's not fully liquid. And what's happened since then? So Musk came out, it's like $43 billion. He is selling some Tesla stock to do that. He's getting debt, all these other things. The ramifications of him making that purchase are somewhat extreme. He sold, I think, $8 billion worth of Tesla stock last week, which caused a drastic decline there. The people that know the Twitter business model well are going, I think initially he's going to have a hard time servicing the debt he took on, which is a part of his purchase price. So they're saying that the Twitter business model is going to have to evolve to pull out more cash, which could have long-term ramifications to not only Twitter, but all his other businesses. And the reason I use this example is just because it just happened. But Twitter's valuation is not nearly as crazy as the stuff that's going on in your average, Bill Gurley type venture capital IPO space. So at some point when you actually have to start paying your bills, meaning you like buy a company with debt, that really hammers home a fair valuation, because if you can't service the debt you took on, it's not a good company.
Exactly. I started seeing this past week the acronym YIMBY.
Oh, yes.
Which is completely separate from this conversation, but the reason it came up, so that's yes in my backyard. We've talked about NIMBY before, not in my backyard, you're supportive of a concept until like it affects you, and then you're not supportive of it anymore. The reason I think about YIMBY in this is your whole debt point of like, that's when things come to you, like when they get real for you, when you have to pay that debt, is when you start to get serious. That's when you start getting in the spreadsheets, right? Like that's when you start looking at the budget, right? Like your budget it's just some spreadsheet we update every now and again for whatever, until you hit like March 2020. Then you start looking at those Netflix, like these subscriptions, because you're uncertain about the future. What do they call it? FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's when you start looking at this stuff for real.
I think Musk this week, I bet he dove into some spreadsheets. Like, I honestly think he goes, oh man, I signed up for $20 billion worth of debt, or whatever the final number is. And Tesla's great, but it's been overvalued. Yeah, I sent you a tweet this morning, right, Dougals? He
Yep.
said Tesla was overvalued at $140 a share, which is a long, long time ago. And now he has to service the debt with Twitter's cash flows. I think Twitter's a very intriguing business, but it's not something that's printing money. And he also says that his core tenets are free speech, eliminating bots, which would reduce the total user count, and maybe eliminating ads for premium subscribers. None of those things help him service his debt. Like, it gets real really quick when you have to pay the bills. And I think what's going to happen over the next 2 to 3 years, per Gurley's point, is people are going to have to start paying the bills.
And in that Bill Gurley Twitter thread, someone had a reply that I also think is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, let's go.
So this guy, Twitter handle @JeffIsTrying. Like, keep doing it, Jeff. Keep trying.
Keep trying, Jeff.
Here's the tweet. Some of us were on the opposite end of that, meaning that being the last 5-year valuations. Some of us were on the opposite end of that. We cut our teeth during the second Gulf War and 2008 recession with recent memory of the dot-com bubble. We had less of a stomach for risk during this bull market because we assume everything is a bubble. Fascinating. Again, you brought up this point time and time again around how the time when you grew up or got used to the market, grew up in, got used to that market kind of dictates your perspective. And so you have one side of the Bill Gurley, what he's saying is last 5 years, people like valuation should be at 100x PE ratios. And then this other guy is saying, but if you grew up in the market of like the knots, right? The first decade of the year 2000, you're like, bubbles are everywhere. Like everything is a bubble. So be careful even being in there potentially.
I mean, the other guy's kind of me, who, when Tesla was at $80 a share, was screaming that it's overvalued, not to mention that it'd go to 1,400 or whatever it peaked at, and Musk would be laughing all the way to the bank. It's very true. But if you go back to our interview with William Green and you talk about staying in the game, the people that stay in the game are going to have the laugh 40 years later, but it's hard to ride through this crazy.
It is. And that's what, so the Berkshire, which I know you don't care, but the Berkshire annual meeting was yesterday, right? In Omaha. They did it in person in Omaha.
It's awesome.
And here's something that Warren Buffett said during that yesterday, which relates. I wish I had like a peanut brittle and cherry Coke with me, because I feel like you need those two things to actually get this right. But
it's an upset stomach waiting to happen.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They were all the live tweeting going on. I love it. And by the way, Dougals, I think I'm going to go next year. So if we want to get a little
Let's
show,
do it. Let's
meet
do it.
and greet. Mark your calendars right now for a Skippy and Dougals meet and greet at the Berkshire area meeting, because literally everyone else on Earth that has an investing podcast was there. But they were debating the guy, I think it's Greg Abel, that's the successor is going to take over. And one guy was like, well, it's a good sign he has peanut butter in front of him on the table. And it's like, it is? That has anything to do with him running this company? I don't think so. But when we go next year, Dougals, I will probably drink some Coke, and I will probably have some peanut butter, and I will probably vomit like 2 hours later.
And there you go. Hopefully you vomit brilliance, like what Warren Buffett says here. He says, we haven't the faintest idea what the stock market is going to do when it opens on Monday. We never have. I don't think we've ever made a decision where either one of us has either said or been thinking we should buy or sell based on what the market is doing, or for that matter, what the economy is going to do.
It's the I'm going to get the value investing equivalent of death threats for saying this. They just say the same thing over and over. All the questions are the same, and then they give the same answers.
Hold on. Sorry, I'll let you repeat what you're about to say. What is the value?
I don't know. I made it up. I'm having a morning here, but it's something along the lines of go buy an expensive stock. It's like, the equivalent of curse words, like go buy something at 100 price of sales or something.
You're right though.
What, that it's the same answers to the same questions for 40 straight years now? They're brilliant. I love them both. But I'm convinced people go to see other people more than they go. If you've followed it for a while, if you actually know about Buffett, there's people that discover Buffett every day. So
Yeah.
I don't want to steal their joy, but like it's the same exact
Yep.
thing every year.
One of my favorite articles that came out yesterday was one where the headline was all clickbait, right? Headline was
Yeah.
something like Warren Buffett reveals his most brilliant piece of investing advice. And so I'm like, what could this be? I click and it says he says to buy the S&P 500.
I liked, there was another one. This is sarcasm, but it said 40,000 people gather to hear the world's best individual stock picker tell them to buy index funds. That's exactly what happens too. He goes, hey, all you idiots out there, you're not me. I'm Michael Jordan. Go buy some index funds and by the way, consume some of my products on the way out. But
yeah, there you go.
Support my hometown.
You're absolutely right, though. And that's like the simplistic brilliance, I think, of it all is that they do say the same things over and over again. It's like you have the pandemics going on, right? What does Warren Buffett do? He pulls out his black and white faxed over slides effectively and starts showing them. And it says like, bet on America. Look, America has grown. If you look at this over decades, look at what America did, right?
You're killing me.
Like that's what he does. And then you come 2021 and the market is going haywire with all like the stocks they're going crazy last year. And they're like, what does Warren Buffett say? Look at America. America's good to bet on. I mean, it's just you like rinse and repeat every year, right? You just do
America is big. We have to move things around the country. Railroads are great.
Exactly. I mean,
I like Coke. It tastes good. I drink some every day. I bought some. American Express is kind of cool. Oh my goodness. I'll buy some of that. Look easy. Like,
all right, what's in your fishbowl?
Couple just random facts for you. I think I want to do a real estate quiz with you, but as we transition to that, I saw this week and I guess I haven't fact checked it, but these stats always boggle my mind. So Amazon, Apple, Alphabet, which is Google, Microsoft, and Meta, which is Facebook, generate $1.4 trillion worth of revenue, if you can believe this tweet. Guess which country that's more than?
Tell me.
More than Mexico. We have 4 companies in the U.S. that generate more revenue than Mexico. I don't know. It just baffles my mind.
Those are big companies. Yeah, it's hard to. Yeah. I wonder what actually makes up the GDP of Mexico. It's about like if you broke out like what Pemex, Cemex,
avocados and tequila. Call it good.
Yeah, that is big though. I mean, those even if you look at the earnings in the U.S., like on the U.S. stock markets, like they make up it's decreasing now, but they make up a pretty sizable portion from an earnings perspective, obviously from market cap perspective, of like what U.S. companies do too. So it's
interesting. I never looked at it in that way. I also heard a story this week, who knows if it's true, of a manufacturing company in industrial farming that needed semiconductors. They found semiconductors that would work for their needs in washing machines. So they purchased 1,000 washing machines, took out the semiconductors and threw them away, if you believe this folklore. To me, that's fascinating.
Those things are valuable. They're valuable right now. Yeah. I love that. It's what's going back to the Mexico thing. Sorry, you got me.
Yeah,
got me thinking about this here. This market, as we've talked about a few times, is fascinating. It's really interesting because there's so much about it that's just different than we've seen in previous times. One of the things that I think is most interesting is you have the markets are dropping, and they've been basically universally, unequivocally dropping for the whole year. I mean, if you like, the market has not really been up. I think maybe a couple days in January has it been up from where it started, right? Any of the indices. So that's happening. Then you have we're through about half, I think, of Q1 earnings so far. And somewhere around 80-ish%, I think it might be 75, 80%, somewhere in there, of companies are beating their earnings estimates. But the companies that aren't are the ones that have had like large, like some of the ones that you just named that have had large like market caps before, which are getting hit hard and taking down parts of the indices. And so the reason I find this to be interesting is I don't know if it's like a reversal or what it might be, but I think it's interesting because if you look at previous big downturns, like if you look at the 2008, 2009 or 2007, 2009, when you look at early 2000s, right, with the dot-com, earnings were getting smashed during those, or they didn't exist, right? If you go to the dot-com piece, like, and so now we're having, as of right now, this could change throughout the course of the year, and we're only halfway through Q1, but you still have companies that are producing a lot of earnings. They just weren't the companies that were doing it before. And so the bottom being out, what I mean by that is like it being able to fall through the bottom right now. Just, it doesn't seem like that would be the case. You never know with the market. It doesn't seem like that would be the case. So it's really fascinating. Does that make sense?
It does in a way. It almost feels like the inequality we see in day-to-day life between the haves and the have-nots also exists in the stock market. There's like these incredible companies that seem to be able to print money, and then there's the others, and the in-between seems less like, oh, this is a solid company with solid earnings that can weather storms. I'm sure there's a bunch of those, but right now I think the contrast between the haves and the have-nots gets highlighted in the stock market. I mean, I feel like there's the Alphabets and the Microsofts and the Apples, and then there's the, who's a good example? I mean, the Robin Hoods, or like these companies that just are down 70, 80% and maybe going down 90% here shortly because they don't seem to have resilience with their profitability that's going to stop the fall off.
I'm probably going to go too far with this, but one way I'm thinking about this is, if you, in any given stock market, if you take the companies that are the like talk of the town, I'll say, like the ones when people think of the stock market at that period of time, if you take what those companies are, the ones that are getting all the attention, and you take them to zero market cap, what happens to the market is like a question. And if the answer to that is, well, the market is basically gone, then we got issues, right? So like if you go into like 2007, 2009, a lot of what was happening there, like it was about real estate. If you're like, if you take real estate banking, right? If you take those and you like slice them in half or cut them down to almost zero, what happens to the market? Market gets crushed. If you go to the early 2000s, it was the Ciscos of the world, et cetera. If you take them far down, market gets crushed. If you go over the last couple years, I'm putting FANG aside for a sec, like not all of FANG or AM that you just talked about aside for a sec.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what was getting a lot of attention were like the Zooms and basically Cathie Wood's portfolio, Zoom, Tesla, etc. If you take those to zero or close to, the market gets hit, but not taken out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've seen over the last 6 or 7 months is those stocks are down 80+%, not Tesla so much, but those stocks are down like 80+%. And the market got hit, and going back to the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, I think folks are kind of currently just like, what's going to happen to like the big players? And when they see hints of like Meta, right, doing anything, because like Meta was effectively like, it was hit so hard that it was priced to like be terrible, and they came out with their earnings, and their earnings were like meh, and so it went up 20%, right? Like they're still they're not fully discounting those. I don't know if I'm going too far, if I'm making sense, but those are just some thoughts.
I agree with what you're saying. This is why the market's so interesting. It just feels different than the past corrections that we've had, or at least in the recent past. And I can't wait to see, like, to your point, if the 5 most valuable companies in the world all have resilient and strong earnings, and then not the rest, but a large majority of companies don't. What does that ultimately mean? I mean, we could do the math for what does that ultimately mean for the movement in the S&P, but it's less drastic than it would be otherwise. It feels like there's just different pockets of the market.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's such a weird market right now. There's what's happening under the surface. We don't even know quite yet, but I think we're going to find out this year. as to whether there's a there once you start taking a lot of this tech out of there. But anyway, deep thoughts. You were
There's a
going
there
into a
there
quiz.
when you take the tech out of there. Yeah.
There's a there with the there with I'm talking about there.
Over there. Okay. I feel like you talked about this a while back, so I just want to tie up the conversation. You've been talking about how fast wages are rising relative to productivity. And I think the flip side of that is how cost of living, specifically home values, rise with wages, right? So it's like productivity's here, which means wages are here. And then sometimes home prices are moving with wages. Sometimes they're moving in opposite directions. Since 2007, home values have increased 2.8 times faster than income on average in the 50 largest metros in the U.S. Pretty stark contrast for home affordability, right?
Yep.
So, according to this article in Real Estate Witch, I had to be really careful saying that one. They break down average home values against average income to give you they call it a home price to income ratio, cost the 50 largest metropolitan areas in the United States. Douglas, I think we might have mentioned this a few weeks back. So, like, any guesses on the most affordable metropolitan area in the United States?
With that, using that ratio?
Using that ratio and this methodology, which I don't think is perfect, but I think you'll get the drift of.
Somewhere in Texas or somewhere in Arizona?
Great guesses. No, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, followed by Cleveland, Ohio. Okay. Followed by Oklahoma City, St. Louis. There's lots of Ohio's in here. So it's kind of Rust Belt heavy.
And now, is that largely because of, I don't know if you can see the individual numbers, because of income or because of home prices? Like, are both very low, but the ratio's high, or is it? Yeah, go ahead.
So for Pittsburgh, I mean, this is awesome. Like, Pittsburgh is clearly a great place to live from this metric. The average income, and I believe this is an average family income in Pittsburgh, is $84,000 and $84,800. The average home value is $190,000. How nice is that, man?
Yeah,
that's like, that feels affordable.
Wow,
right? You contrast with the most expensive cities. And actually, I'm a little shocked at the number one city on this list. Any guesses?
Seattle?
I would have guessed. So Los Angeles, California, followed by Silicon Valley, San Jose, and then San Francisco, then San Diego, then New York. Average income in Los Angeles, they have it at $80,000, and home value is $782K.
Yeah, it's hard when you have a place that like LA that's so big, so like the range is vast. I'm assuming that when they say average here, they're talking about the mean, not the median.
It actually says average, which would be the wrong metric in my opinion. And I said I don't love this analysis. I think it's directionally correct, but I wanted to talk through it because I find it interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
So I've been hung up on this metric, and I've been trying to find good analysis on it since I heard a Jeremy Grantham podcast like 3 months ago. And he had, I think, better statistics than this, where he broke down just some common sense stuff on, and Seattle was one of the ones he mentioned. His number for Seattle was like 7 times income. And he was like, just look at all of history. 7 times income, 10 times income does not work. There will be a correction that has to happen. It doesn't matter. When people compare the housing market today to the housing market in the lead up to the housing crisis and like the Great Recession, they often say, well, look, there's a lot less debt. People are making more cash offers. There's all these differences where people say it's different this time. And I think there are some fundamental differences, but I also think there's certain like home to income levels that are just unsustainable. And I do feel that there's certain communities that are reaching those.
It kind of goes back at least a little bit to the conversation we're having near the beginning of the episode today around like when things come to roost, right? When you have to pay down your debt, or like when you start looking at the spreadsheet, what does it come down to? And I think that's where some of these issues are faced, meaning that the people overextending themselves to buy the the high priced home, right? And then they see themselves able to buy that because of the valuations of their stock portfolio or because of the income or whatever they might have right now. But if you like the moment that drops, are they able to afford it? Question mark. I think that's one side of it. The other side comes, I'd say, even if the nothing else, because of optics, meaning if you are someone that is of a lower wage, right, that's on that side of the equation, and you see the average home price at 700K, that you're just like pissed, like, right? And when I say optics, I don't mean that there aren't also just real hardships for that person. I just mean that even if it was just optics, like that still is a sucky thing, like to see that I'm this person in the community that's wherever I am and making this amount of money and people are buying $1 million homes. What's wrong with me? What are they doing to me? What's happening? Right. It's a
really tough one. Yeah. So I'll try and put a bow on this. I think it tells the same story, right? So if you look at the year 2000, you look at these 50 metropolitan areas, you average them all. The price to income ratio was about 3 times. So if I make 100K, the average home price is 300K. That seems fairly affordable. If you fast forward to 2021, use the same methodology across all of the US, these 50 metropolitan areas, that goes to 4.1. So homes are more expensive relative to income. I don't think anyone argues that. If you look metropolitan by metropolitan, like in 2000 in Seattle, the price to income ratio was 3.5. Today, it's 5.5. And we just talked about LA. Today, it's 9.8, which seems clearly unsustainable. And in the year 2000, it was 4.9. So homes have doubled in their affordability over the last 21 years in Los Angeles. It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's big. You put all this stuff
I'll
together.
Put that on.
It's not a good scenario.
I'll put that on the Twitter, and you guys can laugh at the directionally correct analysis there. It's good. It's good talking points, though.
What else you got?
Bloomberg wrote this article like 3 weeks back called "The Can't Lose Betting Strategy That's Taking Gambling Out of Sports Gambling." Good title, huh?
Yeah.
So being the value investor that I am, I was fascinated by this. And I shared it with a couple friends because I have some value investor friends who are just as much of a cheapskate as me, Dougals, who are always about making a few bucks for free. I had a friend this week who successfully executed this strategy in Colorado, where sports betting is legal. The initial article was written for New York, but it's basically all the same. All right, so there's like 5 to 10 betting services. I'll walk you through his experience. And he actually gave me the dollars and cents if we want to go there. So you find 2 betting services that offer $1,000 risk-free bet. And Dougals, being the Vegas lover that you are, I bet you know some logistics on how that might work. So it's tilted in the favor of the gambling house. Any ideas?
I'll just state this. I like risk-full bets. So like I see stuff like this, I run the other direction. I want all the risk. If it's risk-free, I'm not interested.
You could not be serious.
I am serious. I'm just like, because I go when I go to Las Vegas to bet, and this is put the poker table aside. That's a whole different scenario. But with the other games, like sports betting, blackjack, whatever else that I'm playing, to me it's about gambling. Like it's actually not even about making money. I'm literally like the first day of March Madness this year, I won too many bets. So the second day I was like, I need to change up my strategy because I'm making too much money. So I got to start betting on other such.
You are nonsensical. You deserve to be kicked off the Skippy and Dougals podcast. All right. So the way it works is you would sign up for 2 accounts. And with each of these accounts, they give you $1,000 risk-free bet. What that means is if you put $1,000 in and bet it and lose, they'll give you $1,000 to try again, basically. You can't take the $1,000 promo out because they want you to bet it, because if you bet it, you're more likely to lose it, right?
Yep.
So you open these 2 accounts, or this is what this guy did. This is what's detailed in the Reddit article. He opens 2 accounts. he bets on the same game with opposite teams. So I'm looking at the NBA playoff schedule right now to give you an example. The Milwaukee Bucks play the Boston Celtics. In one account, he bets on the Bucks to win the game. In the other account, he bets on the Celtics to win the game. And he adjusts his bet based on the current odds of that to make sure that regardless of who wins, he gets the exact same amount of winnings. That means he probably has to put a little more money in to the favorite because the return on that isn't as great. I don't want to go into sports betting, but say you put $1,000 on one team and you might have to put $1,200 on the other team to get your winnings to be the same regardless of who wins. That's your first bet. What that means is you lose one and you win one. When you win, let's just for simplicity's sake say your $1,000 turns into $2,000. Then you have $2,000 in one account and you have $1,000 in the risk-free bet promo come to the account you lost. Then you do the same thing over again, probably on the same teams a day later, and structure it so your winnings are the same. One of those teams is going to win, and you're ultimately going to end up with about $3,000 for your initial $2,000 investment. You pull the money out, you never touch those services again, and you go.
Because the promos say that you can't take the money out after your first bet. You have to place another bet. But after you have that second bet, then you can start taking money off the table.
Yeah. So if your second bet with the promo money wins, when it wins, you can pull it out. If your second bet with the promo money loses, it doesn't matter because you won in your other account with the real money. So
there you go.
The way he did this, he did the elaborate math. I loved it because he showed me all the steps, right? It was an investment rather than a gamble. And what he said was so funny about it is he didn't even watch the games because the games were boring because the outcome did not matter at all because he got the exact same to the penny.
Yeah. See,
payout.
This is why this stuff to me, it's not investing. That's not the itch that it scratches for me. It's not investing. So what I do is
it's free money.
I take both of those accounts and I bet the same way on both of them. That's what I want to do.
Diggles, this is not a strategy for you.
No, it's really not. I read this and I went, that's smart. Put it all on black. So
it is though. This is the equivalent. The world just cracks me up because it's the equivalent of being able to go be 100 on red, 100 on black, and somehow guaranteeing that turns into $300. No casino's dumb enough to do that, but you can play these guys against each other, and they obviously don't know that you have hedged your bets across multiple bookies, but it's hilarious.
No, they don't. But the way that they win in the long run, assuming that they do, is that they know human emotions and human psychology. Right? It's kind of bringing it back to the investing thing. Yeah. So what you can do, buy VTI, buy SPY, like Warren Buffett said, and just let it sit. And I'm going to say guaranteed. We all know it's not guaranteed, but I'm just going to use that for this sake. And you have a guaranteed 7 to 8% for the next 50 years of your life. And that's pretty wonderful.
Yep.
And they go, oh yeah, I see that guaranteed money. So I'm going to buy options on Robinhood. Right? That is human psychology. That's what we do, which is where these houses, these gambling houses, they understand that. So they know that after that second bet, even if you did this, after that second bet, you're going to now see the Suns are playing. You're going to go, yeah, all right. Yeah, I might as well bet on that. It's risk-free money anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It feels... I don't have. You stumped me, man. You stumped me, Douglas. Humans are horrible. The human brain, not so good.
All right, let's wrap it up on that optimistic note.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. The articles I mentioned today will go out on the Twitter. Which is at Skippy Douglas. You can hit us skippydouglas.com. We appreciate the listener mail. Let us know what you think of the funny jingle. Hope it made you smile, and we'll see you next week.